Next News Network. It is 8:16 p.m. in your nation's capital. 78 degrees and sunny, 47% chance of precipitation on July 23rd. It's Thursday. The week's almost done, and so are we. But we're not done yet. We've got a lot of news tonight, and you are joining us live on X at Next News, Trump Daily Post, and on YouTube as well as Rumble. We're going to start with our White House rundown and then get to the rest of the day's top stories. Good evening. I'm Gary Franchi, Next News Network Chief White House Correspondent, delivering the latest White House news from the past 24 hours with our streaming partner, Trump Daily Post. President Trump's biggest move today centered on a major expansion of the Ratepayer Protection Pledge, locking in protection so AI and data center growth do not drive up electric bills for American families and businesses. The day also brought a firm Trump warning to Iran and the Houthis, a White House briefing from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, and a Rose Garden celebration as the back-to-back World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers visited the White House. Now, according to the daily guidance, the president's public schedule set the day around three main events: Caroline Leavitt's 11 a.m. briefing, earlier than usual, a 2:30 p.m. Ratepayer Protection Pledge announcement at the Environmental Protection Agency, and a 4:30 p.m. Rose Garden event honoring the 2025 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. The schedule also listed an evening Oval Office policy meeting and a separate meeting with the U.S. Ambassador to Switzerland and Liechtenstein, along with Newt Gingrich. By 11:22 a.m., the 2-minute warning went out for the press briefing in the James S. Brady briefing room. And at 11:24 a.m., Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stepped to the podium and rapped at 11:45. She updated reporters on President Trump's schedule and fielded questions on the economy, the Saudi deal, socialism, Darlene Graham, and keeping the administration's message centered on policy and results. At 12:03 p.m., the White House called a routine lunch lid, pausing public updates until 1 p.m. At 1:48 p.m., the in-town travel pool was told to gather for the motorcade departure as the president prepared to head to the EPA. Now, the motorcade rolled out at 2:10 p.m. from the White House, with the press pool loaded at 1:55, heading to the Environmental Protection Agency. At 2:14 p.m., the pool arrived at EPA, where a roundtable on the Ratepayer Protection Pledge brought together President Trump, Energy Secretary Chris Wright, Governors Brian Kemp, Jeff Laundrie, Brad Little, and Jim Pillen, along with local officials, utility executives, and Meta CEO Dina Powell McCormick. The lineup underscored the administration's argument that American energy growth and American AI leadership can move together without punishing ratepayers. At 2:21 p.m., President Trump arrived to a long-standing ovation and began speaking at 2:23 with Chief of Staff Susie Wiles also in attendance. During those remarks, President Trump called artificial intelligence bigger than the internet, said the United States is leading China, and made clear he intends to keep that edge. He also stressed the need to stay ahead in cryptocurrency, praised Lee Zeldin as phenomenal, and saluted governors in the room who are helping build the next phase of American infrastructure. He wrapped his remarks at 2:53 after another sharp line on national strength. Quote, "We are going to continue to be free as long as we're smart." He also worked the room with a political check-in for Governor Jim Pillen, asking, do they still like Trump in Nebraska? At 2:55 p.m., the press pool left the EPA and the motorcade departed at 2:58 for the return to the White House. The motorcade reached the White House grounds at 3:01, closing out the EPA leg of the day. Later in the afternoon, the press pool was called to gather at the Palm Room doors ahead of the Rose Garden event with the Dodgers. The team entered at 4:20 p.m., with many attending wearing Dodgers caps. President Trump emerged from the Oval Office at 4:35 and began speaking at 4:37, turning the Rose Garden into a celebration of championship baseball and American sports tradition. Attendees included Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the DHS Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, Bill Pulte, and Michelle Steele. President Trump finished his remarks at 5:01 p.m. after receiving a personalized ring and a Dodgers jersey bearing Trump 47. He then headed into the Oval Office to present the team with a gift. By 6:02 p.m., the White House called the final lid for the day and confirmed that the president's gift to the Dodgers was a Trump challenge coin. In a White House statement released later in the day, the administration laid out the full scale of the Ratepayer Protection Pledge expansion. More than 200 utilities, data center developers, cooperatives, and states have now signed on, covering 80% of the power delivered to American homes and businesses and protecting 263 million Americans from data center-driven rate hikes. The pledge locks in a simple Trump standard: large operators fund the new generation of infrastructure they need, not working families. The White House highlighted projected customer savings and rate projections across Michigan, Indiana, Georgia, Mississippi, Wisconsin, Louisiana, and Texas, with agreements involving companies including Google, Oracle, Amazon, Alphabet, Meta, and Crusoe. A second scheduled distribution later in the day mirrored the same core agenda: the APA announcement, the Dodgers ceremony, the Oval Office policy meeting, and the evening ambassador meeting remained the backbone of the president's Thursday. And that is the White House daily rundown over the past 24 hours. The Trump administration projected strength overseas, consumer protection at home, and a steady public schedule built around energy, growth, and American confidence. Now let's turn from the President's Day to the other top stories moving across the country tonight and welcome you to the broadcast. It's great to have you guys here tuning in live. I'm Gary Franchi, your chief White House correspondent. We got lots of news to get at tonight. We're going to bring the latest on Iran, big moves by CENTCOM overnight. We're also going to be discussing further the communist takeover of the Democrat Party and some of the reactions that are coming from members of the Democrat Party who continue to see the Trojan horse that is emerging from within their own ranks. We also have an update on the Save America Act, which still remains center focus here for us at the Next News Network, because I know it's a very important matter to you as well. I believe that if we don't get that passed, we will lose this nation. Also, some really good news. The hunter has become the hunted. That's right. Jack Smith, caught dead cold, now under DOJ investigation. We have the details on that. We're going to continue also our coverage on Cuba. Now, I really think this is important to stay on top of. The rhetoric coming out of the State Department is very telling. I truly believe that we are seeing the groundwork being laid for the complete takeover of Cuba very soon. And the rhetoric is all pointing in that direction. And of course, President Trump's been telegraphing that for months. So some new developments out of the State Department we will be bringing you today. And we're going to continue to discuss voting security with respect to illegal aliens, immigration, and a curious moment on CNN from Turd Tapper himself. Will bring you those remarks that will likely shock you. So stick around, don't go anywhere. Get your popcorn out. Make sure your coffee is brewed and you have a full pack of cigarettes, because this edition of Between the Headlines is going to be spicy. "12 consecutive nights of CENTCOM strikes just crushed Iran's missile bluff, and then the IRGC dumped out propaganda footage of their new drones like it changes the score. Well, it doesn't. Trump keeps hammering their launchers every single night. And I want to show you the line from Rubio that tells you Tehran knows it's losing. Now at 10:30 p.m. Eastern on July 22nd, CENTCOM finished night number 12. 12 straight nights hitting Iranian military targets, from missile and drone storage to maritime capabilities, coastal surveillance, and air defenses. And that's not a warning shot. That is Trump choking the Islamic Republic's war machine in real time, while the Houthis fire at Saudi ships and Sergey Lavrov sits in the same orbit protecting Iran's patrons. When Trump says Iran has evil intentions and can never get a nuclear weapon, you know exactly what hangs in the balance. American troops, global shipping, and every city the mullahs would love to blackmail. After 12 straight nights of hitting Iran, a lot of Americans are asking a smaller question at home. When did you last truly feel recovered? Well, Jonathan Otto built a medbed hack around cellular energy focus because mitochondria, starved of the right frequencies of light and the right electromagnetic environment, slip into less energy production, slower recovery, and slower repair. Red Life combines red light therapy and PEMF, two clinically studied wellness technologies using specific wavelengths to boost cellular energy production and support natural repair processes. Gentle electromagnetic pulses support circulation, recovery, and function. You get 10 clinically studied wavelengths, advanced dual chip technology, and up to twice the power in 30 minutes a day, right from home. Hit medbedhack.com. It's linked below. Use code NNN30 for 30% off bundles, NNN25 for 25% off individual devices. Weak men stall, strong men restore. So we're talking about 9 commercial vessels that got redirected while CENTCOM enforced the blockade around Iran. And that part matters. We're not just watching Trump blow up launchers, we're watching him squeeze Tehran's ability to move, hide, and bluff at sea. Now look at the tweets, because the White House and Rubio just said the quiet part out loud. Earlier tonight, U.S. military released this statement at 10:30. CENTCOM forces completed another round of strikes against Iran. U.S. forces struck military targets, maritime capabilities, drone storage facilities, coastal surveillance. This month, American forces have targeted dozens of Iranian military sites on land while resuming a blockade against Iran. As of today, CENTCOM has redirected 9 commercial vessels. More than 50,000 U.S. service members are operating across the Middle East. Here's some of the footage that has now just been released by CENTCOM, newly declassified video that is making the rounds online. Remarkable and dramatic visuals of the destruction that is raining down all over Iran. And these are really just the last few pieces, I think, that President Trump is targeting. With this skirmish, this conflict has been going on for quite some time now. And President Trump is picking them all off one by one. So the overnight strike images make the message plain. The U.S. is hitting Iran's military machine night after night. Now the focus shifts to diplomacy. Reporters pressed Rubio on whether Russia is helping Tehran target American troops. And what's interesting about this video you're about to see, as a reporter is asking the question whether he will confront Lavrov about Russia helping Iran target U.S. troops. And immediately the press is ushered out of the room. It's verboten. You cannot ask this question to his face. And this is where the panic sets in. Watch.
Mr. Rubio, will you ask the Foreign Minister today about Russia helping to target U.S. troops? Is Russia helping Iran target Americans?
Ms. Lavrov, when will Russia stop its war in Ukraine?
Once again.
Okay, thank you, press.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Speak louder.
Time to depart. Thank you, press. All right, guys, let's go. Come on.
You heard the
Sorry. Thank you, press.
Thank you. Individuals on the Russian side
Thank you.
speak up, and then
All right.
it looked
Thank
like
you. Gotta let them start their meeting.
somebody from the administration, the press wrangler, said, nope, we're not going to be having that conversation. So it got cleared out real fast once the hard questions started flying. Next, Rubio posts the official readout of a sit-down with Sergey Lavrov, and what they say was, in fact, on the table. He says, we met today with Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov on the sidelines of the ASEAN ministerial. We discussed the U.S.-Russia relationship and the need to end the Russia-Ukraine war. Interesting moment, right? You see that one question asked, press gets scrambled out of the room, and Rubio posts this photograph. So publicly, the meeting is framed around U.S.-Russia ties, and ending the war in Ukraine. But back in Washington, President Trump draws a hard line and warns Iran will pay if Houthi proxies fire again. The president posting on Truth Social about holding the Houthis accountable. They're starting up again. If they do this again, the U.S. will hold Iran responsible, in that the Houthis are a surrogate and or proxy of Iran, and major military punishment will be inflicted upon Iran. And of course, the Houthis themselves, President Donald J. Trump, official readout from the White House. So the warning is blunt. If the Houthis move, Iran owns it. Marco Rubio takes it further, saying Tehran's threats are meeting a policy far harsher than an eye for an eye. Here he is again in the Philippines on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit.
You know, guys, I saw Arachi, their foreign minister, who the other day say or something about their policies, an eye for an eye. The president's policy is a head for an eye. I mean, honestly, that's what it's going to be. I mean, they will pay a very heavy price for the things they're doing. They're already paying a very heavy price. You guys don't know it because you don't cover it. You're not in Iran. You're not in the street. They don't have a free media. But they're going to continue to pay a very heavy price. Their industrial base has been decimated. Their defense industrial base has been decimated. They're losing launchers. They're losing radars every single night. They are suffering billions of dollars in damage, and their economy is a disaster. But despite all that, okay, these people who are calling us every day, begging, let's do a deal, they send us messages through other countries, third countries. I mean, they're running out of countries to send. Even I had countries here coming up to me, oh, I just spoke to the Iranians, they want to do a deal. The problem is, every time these people do a deal, they either break it or after they make it, they want to change the deal. So they're probably not ready to do a deal yet, but they will be soon, because the price they're paying is very high, despite their tough talk and their flowery language and their stupid Lego videos they put out. I've never seen them, but they put these things out on social media. Despite all that bravado, they are suffering tremendously, and they're going to suffer more until they come to their senses. They're not there yet, unfortunately.
So Rubio says Iran's military base is getting wrecked, its economy bleeding, and the regime's begging for a deal through back channels. Then the IRGC tries to answer with propaganda footage of missiles and drones aimed at U.S. bases. IRGC Aerospace Force has released footage showing the launch of the Qam 1 and Fatah 1 medium-range ballistic missiles, along with the Shahed 136 and Shahed 238 and Shahed 107 loitering munitions targeting U.S. military installations across the region. We can see some of this footage here. Favorite soundtrack applied. We'll just go ahead and mute that. But curious how they're so scared they're blurring out parts of the video. They don't want our reverse engineering of the landscape to reveal the location. But we have our own Space Force, of course, which can read a name tag on a camel. So I'm not worried about that, but they are certainly. So this is some of the propaganda that is now being released by the Iranians. We have missile. We have rocket. Death to America. Death to America. All right, this is the kind of thing that they're trying to scare us with, but of course, you mess with the bull and you get the horns, as they say. So that's just some of the footage that's coming out. It's their favorite move. Slick missile video to fake strength after taking real losses. Meanwhile, the White House gets asked why Saudi Arabia can get a civilian nuclear deal while Iran gets shut out. Pretty stupid question from a reporter in the White House press pool. Oh, why can't Iran have one?
Ask you one other question. Sure. Just playing devil's advocate, why does Saudi Arabia get a civilian nuclear deal, but Iran doesn't get a civilian nuclear deal?
Well, again, this agreement is still being worked out. Well, it will eventually, hopefully, be finalized with the condition that the president spoke about this morning. But this agreement in particular, as it's been discussed thus far, does give priority access for American companies in the Saudi nuclear energy program, which will ultimately benefit American industry workers and supply chains. So the deal that has been discussed thus far and will continue to be discussed absolutely puts America first, and that's obviously very important to this president. Ed.
Now, the reporter who did ask that question, he's actually quite a nice guy. I've had a number of conversations with him. Most notably, got to know him in the Netherlands when I was covering the NATO summit. And he was on a marathon press run with his team. Nice guy. I got to talk to him about how he started his career, and it was actually quite shocking to learn how he began. But I digress. But the answer was simple there: America first and no freebies for the terror regime. Next, President Trump sums it up himself, saying Iran is not ready for a deal and cannot ever be allowed to get a nuclear weapon.
We're doing very well against the Islamic Republic of Iran. We're doing extremely well. They would like to do something, but I say they're not ready yet. They need more of the same. They're not ready yet. They got some evil intentions. We cannot let them have a nuclear weapon. If we did all this that I'm talking about your data centers, isn't that important? When they start blowing away communities one by one, we cannot let them ever even think about having a nuclear weapon, and that's exactly what's happening. They'll never have a nuclear weapon. Under the And by the way, this should have been done by other. They've been saying 47 years now for about 3 years, but this should have been done for 50 years by other American presidents or other countries. Didn't have to be us, but it seems to. If we don't do it, nobody else is. But I will, and nobody else has the capability to do it either. We built, in my first term, the greatest military anywhere in the world, and we're using it a little more than I thought, but that's all right. We had Venezuela, that Chris is doing a fantastic job, and we've paid for the cost of that war many times over. We're taking millions and millions of barrels of oil, and it's going to Houston and Louisiana. You know that. You see those ships lined up.
Quote, the president's policy is a head for an eye. That's what Marco Rubio snapped, and that line lands because Rubio tied it to specifics. Iran's industrial base has been decimated, its defense industrial base has been decimated, and the regime is losing launchers and radars every single night. So when the Ayatollahs and the IRGC wave around their little bottle rockets, they're not projecting strength, they are masking their panic. So President Trump told the Houthis, do this again, and Iran gets hit. And that's the whole doctrine. It's the first honest doctrine Washington has thrown at Tehran in decades. No more fake separation between the Houthis and the regime that arms them. No more media fairy tales that the IRGC can target U.S. installations with their little rockets and then hide behind diplomatic theater with Lavrov in the room. Trump shattered that game, and Rubio drove the stake deeper when he said Iran wants an eye for an eye and Trump's policy is a head for an eye. Good. Well, that's how you deal with a terror state that begs for a deal by day and plots against Americans by night. So drop your take below and send this to one person still trapped in the Obama-Biden fantasy that cash and lectures, tame mullahs, and back overwhelming force until this regime loses the tools to threaten our people. And Rubio's head for an eye line is exactly the kind of clips YouTube loves to bury. And our credential team inside the White House is sending more tonight. So text White House to 844-840-4963. You see that on your screen there. You get those straight from the building reports on your phone before the platform censors decide that you shouldn't see them. That is the latest on Iran. We'll have more on that as we continue to track this topic. But now I want to get into James Carville's remarks today and more about the collapse of the Democrat Party. It's actually rather frightening when you see how the communists are using the Democrat Party as a Trojan horse to overthrow the United States. They're here. I mean, they're on our soil. And it's up to us to make sure that they don't advance. James Carville just blew the whistle on his own party with 4 words nobody in Democrat media can unhear. Overeducated little white turds. When even Carville is screaming that the activist class inside the Democrat Party despises normal Americans, you're not watching a debate over messaging, you are watching a communist takeover out in the open. Now, the stake here is constitutional America itself. Ted Cruz ripping the mask off and said socialist is too soft because these Democrat Socialists of American radicals, they want to abolish the Senate, seize property, and let the House appoint the president and Supreme Court. Hakeem Jeffries heard the communism charge and still snapped back. We're taking back control. Well, there it is. Power first, country last. And that is how republics get gutted from the inside, while party bosses and their media servants keep selling the lie that it's just fresh progressive energy, right? You see, James Carville exposed one confusion machine tonight, and seniors on Medicare face another at home. Big Insurance runs a Medicare confusion industrial complex to keep people stuck. Chapter cuts through it. They're simple by design, one simple call, and you get matched with an advisor who advocates for you, not Big Insurance. No activist class jargon, no propaganda, just facts. Chapter looks at your doctors. Chapter looks at your prescriptions. They do a whole situation review and lay out your best plan options with no propaganda, just facts. If your current plan is right, they'll say so. If not, they can help you switch. The average of $1,100 saved gets attention, and it helps. The help is free. It takes about 20 minutes. That's it. Call the number on your screen there, 910-728-4109. Stop letting bureaucratic games box in your family and your choices. Now, here's the part that should chill every American family. See, the surge is already showing up in Democrat primary polling. The communist wing is rising. The establishment is sinking. And that means the crazies are no longer knocking at the door. They are taking the keys. Here is James Carville going nuclear on the Democrat socialists. He says these people are paternalistic and it's a bunch of overeducated little white turds.
I'm going to read something to you, and I'm going to tell you why this is typical. A progressive House candidate who served in a battleground district in Michigan as law and Democratic Party officials once said black U.S. political leaders are a pillar of the capitalist and imperialist American establishment. Yeah, Jim Clyburn is part of that. Yeah, you're right. That's exactly who Martin Luther King was. Yeah, you're right. That's who John Lewis was. And these people are paternalistic, and it's a bunch of overeducated little white turds who think they know more than other people know, and they know what's wrong. And they're going to go and then you got, they're talking about indicting Netanyahu. And that the problem is you have a candidate, a DSA candidate in New York saying we should be against interracial dating. Let me tell you something. These people, and these are to all my black friends and people like me, they think they know more than you do. They think their history is more glorious than yours. They think that Lenin was a more glorious human being than Martin Luther King or Frederick Douglass. That's what they really think. And if you know that, you don't know your history. And you should view these people with extreme skepticism, because they think they know what's better for you than you know what's better for you. And they think they know your history better than you know their history. This asshole don't know what he's talking about.
James Carville phoning it in from his bed, it looks like. But we have more. He just said out loud what Democrats usually hide. Their party is crawling with smug left-wing ideologues. Now Ted Cruz takes it further and says these aren't just socialists, they are communists.
Socialist is not even the right term. These DSA radicals are communists. They're open Marxists. They're calling for ripping up the Constitution. They're calling for abolishing the United States Senate. They're calling for the House of Representatives to appoint the President and the Supreme Court. They are calling for property confiscation. They are calling for government ownership of companies and taking over the economy. This is, if you look across the globe, whether it is communist China or communist Soviet Union or communist Cuba or communist North Korea, communism produces misery, poverty, suffering, and death. And the dynamic we've got is most of the Democrats, they don't fully agree with it right now, but they're looking at their party and they're saying, the young people, the crazies, the radicals, the energy, the money, that's where it is, and not a one of them is willing to say, these people are bat crap crazy.
Ted Cruz. I wonder if he's going to be throwing his hat in the ring for 2028. I'm guessing he will. But he lays out the warning in plain English. The radical wing is driving the Democrat agenda next. Shows why, with new 2028 polling putting the socialist faction in the driver's seat. Early 2028 Democrat primary polling is out. The socialist wing is surging. The Democrat establishment is sinking.
Normally would be this would be the first primary, but the Democrats haven't even decided where their first primary is. I don't even think New Hampshire's in contention to be the first primary.
Did you see Kamala Harris in that list, guys?
By the bottom.
She's fallen, even though she's been topping polls nationally. But look, it's early. You're right, though. Nevada will probably be the first, or South Carolina. We'll see. There's a lot of way to go. But I think that what you can glean from all polling is that the Democrats have a socialism problem. You see that in the primary candidates winning. You see that in the polling. And if there's a socialism ideological problem, who does that mean prevails in a primary where it's only Democrats voting? It means someone like AOC, someone like Bernie Sanders, someone from that wing.
Did we get reaction from AOC about topping the poll?
Wow.
This normally would be
someone like AOC, someone like Bernie Sanders, someone from
AOC about topping the poll.
We did. She was pretty thrilled about it.
Hit play.
There was a UNH poll that came out that had you surging in 2028. Mm-hmm. When you see that, what do you think?
I feel very, humbled by the support of everyday people. I think that, polls go up, polls go down. That's kind of part of how all of this works.
Why do you think yours are going up right now?
You'd have to ask folks in New Hampshire.
Right.
You'd have to ask them.
But does that change how you think about your future?
I think when I make decisions about my life, they aren't just rooted in polls. They're rooted in what people need, what is best for the country, and what is appropriate for the moment. And I think that right now, the most important thing before the country right now is for Democrats to win the midterm elections. That's why I have put the energy that I have put into it.
Wow.
She's got two options.
Wow, that's terrifying to consider. But the numbers point to a party rewarding the AOC Bernie wing, not rejecting it. Next, the White House press secretary makes the threat official, calling out self-proclaimed communists rising inside the Democrat Party, from the briefing room earlier today.
Well, unfortunately, we don't seem to have too many of those left in the Democrat Party. We have literal self-proclaimed communists who are winning elections and who are claiming to be the new leadership of the Democrat Party. I think the vast majority of Americans understand the dangers of communism. Just look at countries all over this world. As an example, Cuba right now is a country that is about to be a failed state because of the communist policies of the past several decades. Communism should never be allowed to lead this country, and the president obviously is strictly opposed to it and all the dangers that it reaps. We've seen it happen across the world. Meredith.
So it's not just conservative media saying anymore. Even the White House briefing room is naming the problem. But when Hakeem Jeffries gets asked about the communist label, watch how he dodges and goes right back to chasing power.
Speaker Johnson's almost taken a page out of your book lately and talking about similarly, Team Normal versus Team Crazy as it relates to communism. How do you break through that message?
It doesn't seem to be working if you actually look at the reaction of the American people in terms of who is on the verge of taking back control of the House of Representatives. People are desperate.
People are desperate, he says. Well, he won't confront the radicals because Democrats still think they can ride the machine back into control. Next, President Trump warns exactly where the free stuff pitch leads: squalor, destruction, and death, from his EPA summit today.
We can't be hoodwinked. We can't be taken advantage of by people that say you're going to have a free home, you're going to get free rent, everything's going to be free. What they don't say is a year later, everything is going to end up in squalor, destruction, and death. And also death for our country. So we have to stop the threat of the communist rhetoric that you're hearing right now, because these people, they don't act. I'm very happy a poll came out. It said they're highly educated, but doing very poorly. In other words, they're losers. They went to school, they got a good education, now they don't know what they're doing. So what they do is they complain about people like yourselves that have done so well. But we can't let the communist ideology we don't want to even think about it for this country. It would be terrible.
Be terrible indeed. Trump draws the line against communist rhetoric and the bait and switch behind it. Then you'll hear a Democrat nominee say the quiet part aloud, calling for more immigrants in office to remake the world order. Democrat nominee Milat Kiros admits the goal is to build a new world order through electing the third world.
I think it's particularly important, not just for our community in Tigray, but communities of the global South, period, right? There's a certain reckoning that we are going to have with the global world order as it exists today, and the way that it fundamentally will have to shift going forward, right? The responsibility that we have as Americans, the recognition that is going to be required of us, of the exploitative and extractive nature that we play on the global scale and the global stage, is only going to be challenged if we are getting represented by people who understand that on a fundamental level, right? And that means getting more immigrants into office. That means getting more people who have heritage in the global South into office, because that's where those decisions are made specifically.
So it wasn't a gaffe. It was the agenda delivered in public, and the final image brings it home, with Democrat socialists marching under their own banner and daring the country to ignore what they really are. When treasonous groups tell you what they want to do, arrest them. That's the meme. And the Democrat Socialists of America, terrifyingly true, is surging in the United States, and it's only you and I who can stop them. So James Carville did not invent this smear from the outside. He confessed it from the inside the Democrat bunker, when he called the activist class paternalistic and overeducated little white turds. Hakeem Jeffries still wants power. Milat Kairos still wants to reorder the world against America. And that is why Donald Trump is right. Their fake freebie gospel ends in squalor, destruction, and death. So it's up to us to force the issue, to make every Democrat answer a plain American question. Do you stand with the Constitution, the Senate, private property, borders, and national loyalty, or do you stand with the radicals that James Carville just exposed, the communists that Ted Cruz named, and the globalists who think America exists to be humbled? Drop your take below. And send this report to one person still trapped in the fantasy that this is just harmless campus chatter, and keep the pressure on Hakeem Jeffries until he answers for that sneer and power grab. Carville's overeducated little white turd's confession is exactly the kind of crack in the wall that YouTube loves to bury. So text White House to the number on the screen, 844-840-4963. Our Next News Network team works credentialed inside the White House, and the reports we pull straight from the building hit your phone nightly before the censors and algorithms can smother them. So the Trojan horse is firmly entrenched within the Democrat Party. It's a massive threat. President Trump and others raising the alarm, and we are right alongside with them, shouting as loud as we can. We hope you're listening. Okay, now we have to move into the Save America Act. Still can't believe we're talking about this for so long. But, the Democrats, they don't want it because that's how they lose their power. And even the rhinos in Congress, they don't want it because that's how they lose their power too. Yes, we know that there's Democrat cheating, but I would bet that there's also some Republican cheating too, guys. I mean, that's how all of the establishment individuals in power maintain it. All right, let's get into it now. Quote, "The Senate is a place that you send things when you want them to die." That's what Donald Trump snapped. And then he named John Thune and told everybody to call the Senate. And see, that's the part I want you to sit with, because The House already passed this, and Trump just exposed the choke point in public, and wait until you hear Kudlow torch the excuse machine. You see, we've been talking about this. New Jersey, they just found 6,600 non-citizens on voter rolls. And Caroline Leavitt today said it's a heck of a lot more. Okay, 6,600 in one state. And John Thune's Senate is still dragging its feet on proof of citizenship and voter ID before the August recess. Now, you and I both know what that means. Every legal vote gets diluted, while Democrats like Ro Khanna bark, make sure ICE isn't at the polls. Well, I would kind of say that unless the left knows exactly who benefits from loose rolls. See, this is not some process game. This is the ballot box, and Thune is bottling up the fix. You see, John Thune's Senate can bottle up a bill, but nobody should leave every dime trapped in a digital system that can lock you out overnight. Can't be frozen by a keystroke. You see, everybody cheers AI and cloud banking until a hack hits, code wipes a balance, or a keystroke freezes access. Noble Gold Investments gives you something real. Physical gold and silver, a coin you can hold, a bar you can stack, and wealth that doesn't live on a server and can't be erased by code. You can even open a tax-advantaged retirement account or get assets shipped directly to your door. Go to nextnewsgold.com and just mention my name and claim a free 10-ounce U.S. independent silver bar when you open a new qualified account. In America, control your own money before Washington bottlenecks that too. You see, Larry Kudlow barked, "Where is it?" and blasted senators for taking off an entire month. And now that hit me because he said out loud what the base has been screaming. John Thune's chamber doesn't lack urgency by accident. It buries pressure under procedure. Now we're going to walk through the receipts because the tweets get even nastier. President Trump in Georgia yesterday railing about the Save America Act. Let's go to that moment.
And finally, we have to pass the Save America Act to defend American elections. And I have to say, Mike Johnson and Congress have done a great job, but we're having a hard time in the Senate. The Senate, what they're doing is it's just not right. Congress is going to pass it again. They passed it 3 times. They're going to pass it again. It's like the Senate is a place that you send things when you want them to die. We can't do this. We're not going to take this any longer. We're not going to take it. You know, I'm trying to be nice, trying to be really nice. You saw we had a big victory last night in Arizona. I've had victories everywhere. But we're not going to be able to take it much longer. When they can't get past voter ID, proof of citizenship, no mail-in ballots because they're crooked as hell. So right now, Congress is working to get as much of our plan as possible into the budget bill to identify and really terminate. Look, what they should do? Very simple. A lot of you don't know about filibuster. They should terminate the filibuster and approve everything. Because the Democrats are going to do it. The Democrats are going to terminate the filibuster as soon as they have a chance. And then they're going to approve Puerto Rico and D.C. as a state. They got 4 more senators. They're going to end up with 12 more congressmen. They're going to get like 40 electoral votes. If they are allowed to do that, by that time I'll be sitting home. And I'm not a big crier. I don't think you want to see me cry, you know? There are some people, they do very well when they cry. But you don't want to see me cry. But I may be crying when I'll be sitting home and I'll say I told them. They got to really terminate the filibuster, get everything approved right away. Because you're going to have a stoppage. You're going to have a stoppage in September. The Democrats won't approve everything. They become deranged, like deranged Jack Smith. Remember that deranged sick puppy? They're deranged, and they won't approve. You're going to have a shutdown in September. And in 2 years later, you have the debt ceiling bill. They would love it. I call it the 1929. You know what 1929 means? That was not a good year. And there's no reason for it. They should terminate the filibuster, everybody call John Thune at the Senate. He's the leader of the Republican Party, and tell him to get this stuff approved.
President Trump clearly angry that we are still talking about the Save America Act and it hasn't landed on his desk. And he put Thune on notice. Mike Lee says he's rechecked the rules and there may be a path to move the SAVE Act anyway. Let's check in with Senator Mike Lee.
The advantage of the budget reconciliation process is that it allows you to take certain legislation that's budgetary, meaning it brings about changes in revenues flowing into the federal government or mandatory outlays being spent by the federal government. It allows you to pass those things without having to go through cloture, and so you don't need 60 votes. I've opined in the past that the Save America Act is a policy bill and that it's non-budgetary and therefore couldn't itself be passed under budget reconciliation. After the House passed its budget today, opening the door for a possible third round of reconciliation in which the Save America Act could be attached, I started looking more closely at this. I think I may have been mistaken. I think I may have been too hasty in concluding that the Save America Act can't be made budgetary. I think there's a path. I'm saying there's a chance. And we got to fight for every single possibility that that chance could materialize.
So he says the path is there. Stay tuned. There's still a procedural opening which blows a hole in the usual Senate excuses, and while Republicans fight for proof of citizenship, Ro Khanna is saying ICE needs to stay away from the polls, right?
We need to have monitors at the polls who are volunteers. We need to make sure ICE isn't at the polls. We need to make sure that we have election observers and prepared to take legal action. The president is going to do everything he can to delegitimize this election.
ICE can be near the polls. That's all they need to do to keep the illegal voters out. But that tells you where the left's headed on election security. Next up, the grassroots response is blunt. Pass the Save America Act. If we can pass the Save America Act before the midterms, we will all but guarantee the complete implosion of the Democrat Party. Let's make it happen. And that's the base demanding action, not more stalling from the swamp. Now, the White House is adding hard numbers, saying New Jersey alone found 6,600 non-citizens on the voter rolls. The press secretary hammering the point again today in the briefing room.
What I will say on New Jersey and this governor, the fact that she just all of a sudden decided to put out a press release saying President Trump and Republicans have been right about non-citizens on our voting rolls is not a coincidence. I think this governor is saying this because she realizes this administration is serious about getting to the bottom of illegal aliens voting and being on our voter rolls in our country. The Secretary of Homeland Security, as you know, sent a letter to several states, including New Jersey, requesting that non-citizens that are on their voter rolls need to be reported to DHS and need to be removed from those voter rolls. So that's why all of a sudden she is speaking truth about the fact that this does take place in states across the country. It is completely unacceptable to have non-citizens on American voter rolls voting in U.S. elections. And she says it's 6,600. We suspect it's a heck of a lot more, not just in New Jersey, but in states across the country. The president is hell-bent on getting to the bottom of this, and it's also why we need to pass the Save America Act to ensure that only U.S. citizens are voting in U.S. elections. And I understand the House had a great accomplishment yesterday with passing the budget resolution, which has as much of the Save America Act as possible, and we encourage the Senate to move forward with passing that resolution into law so the president can sign it into law by the August recess. It's of the utmost importance to this president, but also to the American people who support this bill overwhelmingly.
So that's the press secretary in the briefing room today. After the New Jersey admission, the message from Team Trump gets sharper. The press secretary says the House already did its job. The Senate better move before the August recess.
Look, the president spoke about this directly yesterday. His patience is running out. He wants to see as much of the Save America passed as possible by the August recess. He knows that's what the American people want to see passed. He was just traveling on the road yesterday, spoke about this, and there was a very loud applause from the people in the audience, the everyday Americans, because voter ID common sense. They want proof of citizenship in our elections, and the president feels very strongly about that. And I would just add, the American people elected overwhelmingly Republicans to lead not just this White House, but also the House and the Senate. The House did its job. The Senate needs to do its job too.
So the deadline is set. Trump's patience wearing thin. Larry Kudlow takes the same frustration straight to the Senate Republicans and asks the question voters are asking, where is the SAVE Act?
Cool that you're going to get the Save America Act, the funding bill. You're going to need reconciliation for that. Where is it? You're saying wait for the House. The House has already passed a CR. They're still haggling over resolution. You're not even going to be here. You don't work 5 days a week. You're going to take off for a month. Where is it going to happen, Senator?
Larry, you're talking about the House again. The Senate's still here next week. Why don't you get Speaker Johnson on board to be able to have this conversation?
But you're going to be gone for a month. You know that. You're going to be gone for the Senate.
We are 3 weeks from now. Yes, we'll be gone because...
Where is it? So he's hammering Senate leadership for dragging its feet and heading to vacation next. Look at the media cover-up. NBC gets caught after spending 2024 trying to debunk non-citizen voting. 2 months before the 2024 election, NBC ran an entire segment debunking the idea the non-citizens vote. Now that we know it's happening, NBC and every network that ran the same story owes the country a retraction, and they should investigate the voter fraud they told us didn't exist.
Let's have a good debate.
Have fun.
On the debate stage.
A lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote.
And at campaign stops across the country.
They're not citizens. They're not allowed to do it. It's illegal as hell.
Former President Trump frequently repeats false claims about migrants voting.
They can't speak a word of English for the most part, but they're signing them up.
That's not true. It's illegal for non-U.S. citizens to vote for president or in any federal election. And there have been few recorded incidents of non-citizens trying to vote illegally. There's also no evidence of anyone trying to get undocumented migrants to vote, according to experts. Those 17 different cities and towns
unless you check with James O'Keefe Media Group, where he caught him in California registering illegals to vote, right? And homeless people. Mike Lee said he may have been mistaken. Now he sees a reconciliation path right after Trump ordered the base to call John Thune because the Senate kills whatever it wants dead. And that's it right there. The excuses just cratered. The workaround just opened, and if Thune still stalls while non-citizens sit on voter rolls, he owns the rot, and every Republican voter in this country should hammer his office until that wall breaks. See, John Thune, bring the Save America Act up and stop hiding behind the Senate process. That's the demand, and Trump just put it right on the table after praising Mike Johnson and the House for doing their job. I want you to feel how raw this is. 6,600 non-citizens on New Jersey voter rolls. The White House saying that the real number runs even higher. Ro Khanna whining that ICE must stay away from the polls, and Larry Kudlow hammering Senate leadership with, where is it? You're not going to watch that pile up and then shrug at another excuse from the upper chamber. Flood Thune's office, share this report, drop a comment, and tell me whether the Senate should force reconciliation now that Mike Lee says there's a path. The base gave Republicans the House, the Senate, and the White House. No more nap time, no more burial ground for election security. Thune's bottleneck on the Save America Act is exactly why our Inside Channel matters tonight. Text White House to 844-840-4963. Next News Network is credentialed inside the White House, and the reports we pull straight from the building hit your phone nightly ahead of the crowd and pass the YouTube suppression machine. Pass the Save America Act now. Meow. Right? Meow. Okay, you heard you heard President Trump bring up Jack Smith in that speech yesterday. I wonder if he had an idea that there was going to be a investigation launched by the Department of Justice against Jack Smith today. Well, that just happened. It is official. We have all the news. The bad news. For deranged Jack Smith, We're going to get at that right now. Okay, it was just toll records. That's what Jack Smith said. Correct. And DOJ documents say his team grabbed the text messages of 44 lawmakers. So stop right there. That is the smoking gun. Jim Jordan just shoved this into the DOJ, and the man who hunted Trump is suddenly the one cornered. And wait till you hear the part about Scott Perry's own phone. We're talking about 44 members of Congress had text message content pulled into Jack Smith's probe. Think about that. It wasn't some narrow paperwork scrape. Smith's team ran through the Biden-Harris DOJ Arctic Frost operation, slapped on gag orders, seized Scott Perry's phone, and captured a full image of its contents. And then Smith sat under oath in December of 2025 and said the records did not include text content. You and I both know what that is. If Todd Blanche lets a federal hitman dodge this, then every patriot in the country stays in the crosshairs of a rogue bureaucracy. Jack Smith's days are numbered. You see, Jack Smith's crowd counted on Americans missing what was crawling under the surface. And it reminds me of a case where a man had a worm moving inside his eye after eating uncooked fish. Parasite purge hits that hidden danger head on. You see, the World Health Organization warns of parasitic infection prevalence with 1 in 2 affected, and it can show up as brain fog, chronic fatigue, pain that won't go away, IBS-like symptoms, even severe chronic conditions. My friend Jonathan Otto built a typical cleanse alternative. It's a full-spectrum parasite elimination protocol with a science-backed parasite formula, including red and near-infrared light therapy and free bonuses like the 10-day intensive parasite detox protocol to prepare your body. Support the cleansing process and maximize your results. Go to purgemyparasitesnow.com. Use code NNN45 to save 45% for a limited time. Don't ignore what is hiding beneath the surface. So it was July 22nd, 2026. Jim Jordan's letter cites 18 U.S.C. 1001 by name. Oh, that's not a cable news food fight. That is a criminal referral with a statute attached, and CNN is still playing word games about a half-truth. A half-truth? A half-truth is still a lie. See, they're not defending the spying. They are defending the lie, and we're going to get into the receipts right now. House Judiciary refers Jack Smith to the DOJ for possible criminal prosecution. And we're learning now that the DOJ has, in fact, launched that investigation. Let's check in with Allison Steinberg of Lindell TV with the details, and then we're going to get to Jack Smith's own words.
Will say the House has gotten quite a bit done this week, which is good. But then again, you have to consider they are going on recess for the next 6 weeks or so, and they leave today. So this was their final day in session, and they wrapped up getting quite a bit done, like I said. So we'll just go through everything that was accomplished, and there is quite a bit to unpack here. So let's dive in. First off, the House Judiciary Committee referred former special counsel Jack Smith to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution after Smith seemingly and willfully and intentionally made false statements during his December 17th, 2025 deposition. The main dispute here is they are saying Smith's team got phone records and apparently text messages from many members of Congress as part of their investigation into Trump's action after the 2020 election. In his testimony, Smith said his team only got basic records, just, who called him, no actual message content. But Republicans are now saying new documents show Smith's team did actually get the full text messages through other subpoenas. So they believe he misled Congress, which is obviously a crime. So what happens next? Well, this is just a referral, like I said. Ultimately, the DOJ is going to decide whether or not to open a real investigation and actually bring those charges. And then, of course, Smith's side in response is calling these accusations baseless, ultimately. So this will be an ongoing situation, but good on House Republicans for getting that done today in the 11th hour. That's a good way to leave the recess. So let's hope the DOJ steps in and does their part here. Though I don't know if I'm hopeful because they failed to act on Anthony Fauci for also lying to Congress, which there is another hearing with him this next week. The Senate is in session for 1 week longer than the House before they go off to August recess. And Rand Paul is bringing Anthony Fauci in for a hearing on Wednesday, July 29th. So,
and we're looking forward to that. So, the first part laid out the referral. Now, here's the paper trail. Jim Jordan's letter says Jack Smith may have lied under oath after DOJ documents showed his team got far more than basic call logs. This is directly from the House Judiciary GOP. Jim Jordan referring the former special counsel Jack Smith to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution. The evidence appears to show Jack Smith knowingly made false statements while testifying under oath before the committee. And here are the receipts for you directly to the Honorable Todd Blanche, Acting Attorney General. We refer strong evidence that appears to show Jack Smith's former special counsel knowingly made false statements during his December 17, 2025 deposition. While testifying under oath, Mr. Smith seemingly made willfully and intentionally false statements of material fact that contradict new documents obtained by the committee from the Department of Justice. The committee is providing this information for the DOJ to investigate a potential violation of 18 U.S.C. 1001. So that is the official letter. But the next clip zeroes in on the key exchange. Catherine Herridge breaks down the difference between toll records and text content, and that's the distinction that could put Smith in real trouble behind bars, where we'd love to see him. The key section, strong evidence appears to show Smith knowingly made false statements about obtaining the content of 44 lawmakers' text message. Question, okay, was it just toll records? Smith's answer, correct. Well, toll records contain metadata, numbers, call date, time length of a call, but not content. Smith was silent on his workaround through the National Archives and apparent bypassing his filter team to review the actual text messages. So she shows the alleged word game. Next, Eric Darty brings the Fox coverage on how House Republicans are framing as straight up perjury before Congress.
Special counsel Jack Smith hit with a criminal referral. House Judiciary Committee Republicans now accuse him of misleading Congress during sworn testimony under oath when he claimed he did not obtain or review lawmakers' text messages during his multiple investigations into President Trump. So that's where we start.
And that is only the beginning. The accusation is now front and center. Smith told Congress one thing while the committee says the records show another. Next, Fox reports the DOJ is already reviewing potential charges.
The House Judiciary Committee and Chairman Jim Jordan are asking the DOJ to investigate whether former special counsel to President Biden, Jack Smith, should be criminally charged with lying to Congress. Listen.
When you ask the special counsel handpicked by the Garland Biden Justice Department to go after President Trump, Mr. Jack Smith, Mr. Prosecutor, worked at The Hague, all this, when you ask him, did you get contents of members of Congress's communications, and he says no, that is not telling the truth, because in fact he did. We think it's pretty darn clear from his deposition, from his public testimony, that he misled Congress, and 18 U.S.C. 1001 says you cannot do that. That's why we referred him.
Justice correspondent David Spunt has all the details from Washington.
So the tables are turning, and now we're at the consequence stage. DOJ looking into possible charges. Next report shows the Swamp's defense line with Jamie Raskin and Smith's lawyers scrambling to argue he was only asked about toll records.
Is officially looking into potential charges, but to be clear, Jack Smith has not been charged. House Judiciary Chairman Jordan said that Smith knowingly made those false statements to Congress during that December 17, 2025 deposition before Congress. He admitted during his investigation into President Trump's alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election that his team collected toll records, what notably more than 40 members of Congress. Now, toll records, Jillian, include time, dates, and lengths of phone calls, but not the specific content of calls or text messages. However, he did receive text messages of lawmakers who texted with Trump White House aides in 2020 as their communications were part of the Presidential Records Act. But Smith says he wasn't asked about the Presidential Records Act specifically. He was asked about toll records. House Democrats, led by Congressman Jamie Raskin in the Judiciary Committee, put out a scathing statement insisting that Smith did nothing wrong. He says in part it seems Republican members of Congress are lashing out because they just realized their communications with the White House became presidential records preserved at the National Archives as required by the Presidential Records Act. This referral deliberately distorts and misstates the facts, including what questions the Republicans actually asked at Mr. Smith's interview. Now, in a letter obtained by Fox News...
Word games. So you heard the excuse from Raskin and Smith's team. Next, CNN goes even further, trying to sell the viewers on the idea that a half-truth isn't really a lie. CNN doing damage control.
Caitlin Polantz, she's been examining the details here. Caitlin, do they have evidence of criminal conduct?
Jim, there is a piece of testimony that Jack Smith gave where if you read sentence by sentence, word by word, he answers truthfully. But Congress, and specifically Jim Jordan on the House Judiciary Committee, they are accusing Jack Smith of potentially making a false statement there because he wasn't forthcoming enough, because he gave a, quote, half-truth. And they want the Justice Department to look and see at whether that could qualify as a false statement charge. Now, just to take a step back, the Trump administration and the Justice Department, we know, have wanted to potentially find something to investigate Jack Smith on. They've wanted to scrutinize his work as special counsel when he prosecuted Donald Trump for January 6th and in the Mar-a-Lago case. They've really wanted to bear down on this. And so this is how Jim Jordan serves that up to the Justice Department. What happens next, still a question, but the allegation here from Jim Jordan, it is that Smith specifically would have made a false statement or given a half-truth when he said that he wasn't seeing or seeking the content of text messages of members of Congress. The members of Congress are quite angry that the special counsel's office did see text messages between members of Congress and White House officials when they got access to White House official phones from the National Archives after people left the Trump administration. But what Smith was actually asked about during his deposition in December, he was asked of whether he was seeking search warrants for content.
Okay, we get it. CNN doing damage control. They can play lawyer for Smith all day, but members caught up in this dragnet aren't buying it. Senator Rand Paul saying new evidence shows Smith spied on dozens of lawmakers, including him. December 2025, Jack Smith swore under oath that he didn't spy on text messages belonging to members of Congress. Today, new evidence confirms he spied on dozens of members of Congress, myself included. This is a blatant abuse of power and exactly what our founders warned about, and he posted this clip.
Did the toll records that you requested from the senators, did they include the content of the phone calls?
No.
Did the records that you requested, the toll records from the members of Congress, include the content of text messages?
No.
Can you explain for us on the record?
So Rand Paul makes it personal. He says he was one of the lawmakers targeted. Next, President Trump weighs in. The only way Trump can, calling Jack Smith exactly what millions of Americans already think he is. We'll take you back to 2024. President Trump going after Special Counsel Jack Smith.
Deranged Jack Smith. And I watched him yesterday go up and talk. He talked for about 2.5 minutes. He was shaking. He was so scared. He didn't want to be there. Because ultimately, these are cowards. They're cowards. And he's a big Trump hater. Openly, he's a Trump hater. And his wife is even more of a Trump hater. I wish her a lot of luck, but he's a bad Trump hater and she's a Trump hater.
So Trump not just blasting Smith, didn't just blast him from the stage. Next, we go to the Oval Office where he signs an order targeting the lawyers and operatives who back Smith's anti-Trump crusade.
This is a good one. Is everybody listening? Deranged Jack Smith. We're going to call it the Deranged Jack Smith signing or bill. Go ahead.
one law firm that provided pro bono legal services to the special counsel's office under Jack Smith's leadership was Covington and Burling. As a result of those actions, we're now going to be suspending and putting under review the security clearances for the attorneys and employees at that firm who worked with Jack Smith's team. And we're going to continue holding the people who were responsible for the weaponization of government who supported it accountable for what they did.
And you'll be doing this with other firms as time goes by, right?
We're looking at sort of the whole panoply of options there.
The weaponization of our system by law firms, even pro bono work they're doing just in order to clog up government, stop government. And nobody knows about it more than me. And hopefully that'll happen again.
So that Covington and Burlington, is that the...
Covington and Burlington.
Okay.
So Rand Paul said new evidence confirms that he spied on dozens of members of Congress, myself included. After Jack Smith swore he did not grab lawmakers' text message content, and that one collision of facts blows the whole operation wide open because Jack Smith did not chase justice. Jack Smith ran a political surveillance machine for the Biden-Harris lawfare crowd, got caught under oath, and now the hunter finally feels the trap snapping shut. So Todd Blanche needs to move on Jack Smith now and not hide behind process. Jim Jordan handed DOJ a referral with strong evidence that Smith knowingly made false statements. And you just watch the key exchange yourself. It was just toll records, correct. Then the paper trail hits. 44 lawmakers' text messages, Arctic frost, gag orders, Scott Berry's phone imaged top to bottom. That's not a bad memory. That is a busted cover story. So I want your take in the comments. Should Blanche charge Smith if the facts hold? And how far up this lawfare chain should this go? And share this with one person who still thinks that Jack Smith was just some noble prosecutor. President Trump called this man deranged long before the media cracked. And once again, Trump was right. And Jack Smith's 44 lawmaker text grab is exactly the kind of story the gatekeepers choke on. So text White House to the number on the screen, 844-840-4963. Next News Network. We are credentialed inside the White House. Our nightly insider reports hit your phone straight from the building before YouTube buries them under the algorithm. Okay, moving right along. That is the latest on Jack Smith. Now we're moving into the curious actions, rhetoric, and groundwork that's being laid by the State Department for the invasion of Cuba. That we know is I know it's next. It's next. I was talking with someone today about it, and they were kind of shocked to hear it. But I read the writing on the wall, friends, and that is why you guys are the first to know. So we're going to get into what's going on. The Cuba is next. Havana appeasement is busted. Cuba is next. That's what President Trump said, and then cracked a joke. He said, pretend I didn't say that. You're going to hear those words. He dropped the line, smiled, and every Havana apologist from Barack Obama's old network to Mark Pocan started sweating. Because Rubio is already stacking the file. And wait to hear what that report ties back to in 1995. See, we're talking July 23rd, sanctions hit 11 Cuban-linked targets as 3 Spanish hotel chains bailed. That is not symbolic at all. Melia, Iberostar, Barcelo are getting out after the Trump administration hammered Cuba's tourism ministry. And you can feel the squeeze already. And now stack that with Rubio's State Department branding Cuba the capital of 21st century communism, and warning that Havana hosted Chinese and Russian intelligence activity 90 miles from our shore. You see it, right? Trump is pressuring a communist outpost in our backyard, while Democrats like Mark Pocan still peddle Obama's fairy tale that nothing bad happened. See, Marco Rubio just named a communist pipeline into American institutions. And big insurance, they run the same scam on seniors through a Medicare confusion industrial complex. Chapter cuts right through it. You see, they're simple by design. With one simple call, you get matched with an advisor who advocates for you and not big insurance. No Havana-style disinformation. No insurance company maze. Chapter looks at your doctors. They look at your prescriptions. They do a whole situational review and lay out your best plan options with no propaganda, just simple facts. And that's how you beat the confusion machine. If your current Medicare plan is right, they will tell you. If not, they can help you switch. The average caller saves $1,100. You see, it's free and it takes just about 20 minutes. So call Chapter at the number on the screen, 910-728-4109. Bureaucrats thrive on confusion, and patriots don't. So Bernardine Dorn and Bill Ayers, they launched Obama's 1995 campaign in their living room. We're going to stop right there on that because Rubio didn't just torch Havana overseas. He traced the pipeline straight into the American left's bloodstream and even the Democrat Party itself. So when we pull up these posts, watch who panics first. President Trump has been saying this for months now. Cuba is next.
But I was watching this and I'm hearing them saying, could he be losing the MAGA base? I don't think so. You know why? Because MAGA wants to win, number one. Number two, they want our country protected. They don't want another country out there that's hostile and crazy to have a nuclear weapon. And number three, they like us protecting certain allies, whether it's Israel or Saudi Arabia or Qatar or UAE, any of them. They want that. MAGA wants strength and they want victory. They want success. And that's what we have. And we have been very, very successful. You know, when I went into Venezuela, I said, because I campaigned on the fact peace through strength, you wouldn't have to use it. I said, you'll never have to use it. But sometimes use it. And Cuba's next, by the way. But pretend I didn't say that, please. Pretend I didn't say that. Please, 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 media, please. Disregard that statement. Thank you very much. Cuba's next.
Cuba's next, guys. So Trump tossing out the line about Cuba. Now Marco Rubio's backing the warning of the report that says Havana spent decades planting spies, backing bombers, and targeting America from the inside. Marco Rubio just put out a new report on Cuba, and holy crap, says MJ Truth Ultra. They're a great follow on X. Cuba's invisible invasion, 70 years of spies, bombs, and the quiet war to turn America against itself. For nearly 7 decades, communist Cuba has run a sophisticated, low-profile campaign of espionage, terrorism support, and ideological subversion aimed at the United States. This is the platform, this is the bedrock that they are going to use. This is the pretext for the invasion of Cuba. The document portrays Havana not as a distant failed state, but as the operational heart of a long war designed to weaken America from the inside right next door. Spies in the highest corridors of power, Cuban agents, allegedly penetrated the State Department, National Security Council, and Pentagon at the deepest levels, some operating undetected for decades. One agent rose to senior National Security Council roles and even became a U.S. ambassador while secretly working for Havana for roughly 50 years. Victor Manuel Roca. He was recruited by Cuban intelligence in 1973 while living in Chile. Over the following decade, he rose through the U.S. foreign policy ranks, serving as Director of Inter-American Affairs on the National Security Council, and later as U.S. Ambassador to Bolivia. He worked for Havana for roughly 50 years. Another was Defense Intelligence Agency top Cuba expert named Ana Belén Montes, feeding secrets, including the identities of undercover officers back to the island. A third State Department official named Walter Kendall Myers spied for nearly 30 years and personally met Fidel Castro. The report suggests that these high-profile cases are only the visible tip of a much larger network. Also fueling violence on American streets, Havana is directly named in the report for recruiting, training, and backing radical groups that carried out waves of attack inside the United States. The report connects Cuban support to organizations behind roughly 2,500 bombings on U.S. soil in just 2 years during the early 1970s. Because Cuba could never match American military power head-on, it perfected a different approach using proxies, safe havens for fugitives, and sabotage to wage a war of attrition. Turning Americans against their own country from the early 60s onward, Cuba built a systematic pipeline to recruit and radicalize Americans. It funded early U.S. support groups, hosted thousands of young activists on the island through organized brigades, and staged major international conferences that spread a new brand of revolutionary ideology focused on racial and social grievance. Isn't that what we're seeing right now, guys? All over the campuses in America? The report claims this infrastructure helped shape generations of activists, influenced politicians, and universities, and left lasting fingerprints on later movements and campus unrest, just like I said. Post-Soviet Command Center. After the Soviet Union collapsed, Cuba's version of communism, less about classic class struggle and more about third worldism and identity-based revolt, survived and expanded. The island is described as an ongoing intelligence and influence operation whose real focus remains to disrupt the United States. It currently hosts significant Chinese and Russian listening posts. We've covered that extensively here on Next News. They're capable of monitoring the southeastern U.S. while continuing to serve as a hub for radical networks across the hemisphere. Taken as a whole, the report presents Cuba as the quiet architect of a multi-generational sting. It spies in Washington, bombs in American cities, activists on campuses, and an ideology designed to turn the United States against itself, all directed from just 90 miles away. And Rubio just busted it wide open. The report is huge, and you should take the time to read it at the statedepartment.gov. Cuba, the capital of 21st century communism, just released. So it lays out the allegation. Next, the State Department puts it on the record and says Cuba is still hosting Chinese and Russian intel operations 90 miles from our shore. They just put this out today. Cuba, the capital of the 21st century, and this is the video that they attached to it.
A stunning new report out from the State Department. It details a decades-long Cuban influence campaign right here in the U.S.
So the State Department report is titled Cuba, the capital of 21st century communism.
The State Department, today they published a bombshell report.
Virtually every left-wing, radical, violent terrorist group in the Western Hemisphere has at some point relied on support from Cuba. And we have 90 miles from our shores, a failed state that also happens to be friendly territory for some of our adversaries. Cuba continues to host a pretty substantial collection of intelligence sites on behalf of the Chinese and the Russians. We've had successive American presidents say that the Western Hemisphere is going to be a priority, and they never do it. And the president has made it a personal priority.
I've known a lot about this, but the fact that it's inside this official report from Secretary of State Marco Rubio is really important.
That is the message from the State Department just issued. So it's not just social media chatter anymore. Next, Rubio turns from the threat file to the pressure campaign, making clear he wants Cuba free, and the regime squeezed hard. He says, we want Cuba to be free. Here is Rubio at the ASEAN Ministerial, where he is right now.
Power with.
So you want me to give you details on our plan?
Yeah. Just,
okay, not today. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you this. No, here's what I told you, and this is the truth. The people who are in charge of the country don't know what they're doing. They don't know. They don't know how to fix their economy. They don't know how. They don't understand basic concepts. And I think the challenge that Cuba has faced for the last 15 years is they want to somewhat improve their economy, but they're afraid that if they improve it too much, they'll lose political control over people. That's the challenge that they face. So I think for us, we're looking for an opportunity to influence the direction that goes, because it's 90 miles from our shores, and we want Cuba to be prosperous. We want Cuba to be free. But in that sense, on the level of detail you're asking me, suffice it to say that as long as the people that are in charge think the way these people think and act the way these people act, it's going to be difficult for them to make the changes that need to be made in order for Cuba to have a better future. Because they just really, they don't understand it. Some of them are incompetent, and some of them just basically don't understand, and others are just so recalcitrant that they'd rather destroy the country than ever walk away from a failed ideology, although I think the number of people in that category is less than it's ever been. But for the most part, it's just people that don't know what an economy is supposed to look like. They really don't. And because they've always relied on foreign sponsors. That regime has survived on subsidies from the Soviet Union and then from Chavez. This is the first time they don't have a sponsor that's giving them subsidies for free. And they don't know what to do with themselves because all they've done is freeload off these countries for all these years. The people of Cuba deserve better than that.
Marco Rubio laying the groundwork for the invasion of Cuba, says they're broke, incompetent, and running out of sponsors. The White House follows with a blunt warning. Communist rule has pushed Cuba to the edge of failed state status. Here is Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt in the briefing room earlier.
Cuba right now is a country that is about to be a failed state because of the communist policies of the past several decades. Communism should never be allowed to lead this country, and the president obviously is strictly opposed to it and all the dangers.
So the administration says Havana's own communist policies caused the collapse, and Democrats jump in to run cover. Mark Pocan claiming Obama's Cuba opening worked just fine, and Rubio is inventing a pretext. Representative Mark Pocan. It's worth remembering that under the Obama administration, the U.S. restored diplomatic relations with Cuba and nothing bad happened. We should not impose a blockade that has fueled a humanitarian crisis for political reasons rather than genuine national security concerns. Here he is on the safe space known as, it was MSNBC. Now they've rebranded because there's such a failed network, MS Now.
This isn't that there's a national security threat to the United States in any way. In fact, when we opened up during the Obama administration, we had good relations between the countries and nothing bad happened. And then we went back to this very repressive era of 6.5 decades of a blockade. And the only people we're hurting at the end of the day are the Cuban people. So if we think we're trying to help the Cuban people or have a different government as some want here in Washington, we're doing the exact opposite. It's the definition of insanity.
Do you think that Secretary Rubio is trying to lay the groundwork, create a pretext for something?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that this is about trying to do an invasion in some way of Cuba. Since what we saw happen in Venezuela, Marco Rubio kept making it connected to Cuba. This report, which is again so ridiculous in what they're saying, how this poor nation that has power blackouts pretty consistently now because of our blockade, can't get medicine and medical parts, can't do almost anything because of the U.S., because of our blockade, and we forced others to do this. To say that somehow they're responsible for anything happening, much less Black Lives Matter or ICE protests like it says, is ridiculous. This is about Marco Rubio just trying to do the politics of South Florida.
So he wants viewers to believe the problem is American pressure, not the regime. But next, Mike Benz revives an Obama-era USAID operation inside Cuba that looks a lot more covert than the left likes to admit. He says one of the most controversial programs during the Obama era wasn't traditional foreign aid. It was covert influence operation inside Cuba. Speaking on Joe Rogan, he details the Zunio project, a USAID-backed social media platform designed to resemble a Cuban version of Twitter. According to Benz, the platform first attracted users with sports, music, and weather before introducing political messaging, using audience data for micro-targeting and encouraging anti-government activism once it reached critical mass. We'll play just some of this here.
This was a scandal during the Obama USAID era. Now, we were running a number of rogue USAID operations in Cuba at the time. By the way, I have to say for the record, I'm no fan of the Cuban government. I'm not even weighing in on whether it's the right or wrong thing to do, in terms of regime change there or, liberating people there from autocratic excess by that government. I'm simply showing the American people where your tax dollars are going and how these things are structured in order to systematically fool you and to fool Congress and to fool the White House. So, for example, this is, and I'll show a couple other things in a second here. But this is Zunzaneo. If you just scroll for a second, we'll start with this, right? So it was an online social media. Just scroll up 1 second. We'll start at the top here. It was an online social networking microblogging service created by USAID and marketed to Cuban users. Wow. This was a Twitter knockoff. See, the background of this is 2009, 2014, that period, the State Department and USAID were gangbusters gung-ho on the promise of Arab Spring-style social media revolutions to topple other governments. The Arab Spring was a Facebook revolution and a Twitter revolution. USAID pumped $1.2 billion in, and we sponsored these activist groups and these civil society organizations to learn how to use Facebook, learn how to use Twitter, learn how to use hashtags, learn how to coordinate street protests so that everyone knows where to go, what street to show up on, what kind of slogans to use in order to create the pro-democracy, predicate for it. But the problem was at the time Cuba did not allow U.S. social media in. So they said, so they're not allowing Twitter in. How can we get a Twitter there, but without calling it Twitter, without making it look like it's coming from the U.S.? So what they did is they took the exact same thing as Twitter. Same user interface, same like and retweet button. Zunzanillo is the Cuban slang word for hummingbird. So it means it's bird. It was the Twitter bird, the whole thing. But the whole trick about it was you have to make it look like it's coming from the Cubans if you're going to do this operation. So what you'll see is it began running. So this is 2010. This is right during the Arab Spring. And what you'll see is they took funds, millions of dollars of funds that were concealed as humanitarian funds designated for Pakistan. Now, I don't know if Joe or the audience, if you've looked at a map lately, but Pakistan is not exactly the next door neighbor of Cuba. Right? So, and this is the Wikipedia whitewashing, and we can get into the deeper layers of this, but contractors funded by USAID, I should note the main contractor was Creative Associates International, who's a frequent one. It's CAI, not CIA, I promise. So they concealed in the budget from Senate, from Congress, from the White House National Security Council. They said that these were humanitarian funds for Pakistan. And then they ran that to their contractor, CAI, to, quote, set up a Byzantine system of front companies using Cayman Islands bank accounts and recruiting unsuspecting business executives who would not be told of the company's ties to the U.S. government, according to the AP. The private companies like Creative Associates International designed the network. The idea arose after they were given 500,000 stolen Cuban cell phones that were available on the black market. And then what you'll see if you scroll down is... Okay, the network, dubbed the Cuban Twitter, reached about 60,000 Cuban subscribers. The initiative appears to also have had a surveillance dimension, allowing a, quote, vast database of Cuban Zunzanillo subscribers, including gender, age, and receptiveness and political tendencies to be built, with the Associated Press noting such data could be used in the future for political purposes. By the way, these are all quotes from the internal documents, and we can go through that. The data would then be used for micro-targeting efforts towards anti- and pro-government users in Cuba. The developers aimed to, at first, use non-controversial content, such as sports and music, and hurricane updates, by the way. They used hurricane updates in the internal things. Basically a humanitarian front that if you sign up to this app, you'll know about natural disasters in the area. Meanwhile, what was the plan the whole time? Once they built up enough subscribers, they would begin to introduce political messages through social bots and encourage dissent in this astroturfing. There's a great Guardian write-up on this. If you go to Guardian Zunzanillo, so you can see how crazy. Just type in Zunzanillo Smart Mob Guardian. You'll see the internal files explicitly said we're going to lure them in with music, sports, and hurricane updates. You have to join. Twitter in Cuba if you want, to be relevant in the culture and see what's trending in sports and music. If you want to be safe in your homes, if you want to know where hurricanes are going, Twitter, Cuban Twitter is the fastest place to get this. It's humanitarian work for, we're saving lives by doing this. But the whole point is once they hit a critical mass, they would create rental riots. And they would use this the same way they used it in Egypt and Tunisia to topple those governments under the Obama administration. They would organize smart mobs, rental riots. And if you scroll down, there's some, this is a fantastic article
there. So that Obama-era program raises a bigger question about who was really playing games around Cuba. Next, the focus shifts to Marco Rubio's report tying Cuban-backed radicals to circles that launched Barack Obama. Barack Obama launched his first political campaign in 1995 in the living room of Weather Underground co-founders Bernardine Dorn and Bill Ayers. That's according to a 100-page report just released by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The radical left terrorist group carried out bombings on the Pentagon, the U.S. Capitol, and other government buildings. Cuban intelligence provided them covert operational support. Obama maintained social and political ties with them for years in Chicago's leftist circles. Those same ties later influenced his Cuba policy, including the release of the Cuban Five. Cuba trained American radicals, gave sanctuary to fugitives, wanted for bombings and murders, and worked for decades to infiltrate and undermine the United States from within. Rubio's report confirms what declassified intelligence and court records have shown for years. So it looks like it was ultimately Obama who was behind the entire plot to undermine Donald Trump's presidency. Forget the Russians, he is the real enemy. So from the Weather Underground names to Obama's early orbit, the report goes straight at the left's old guard. Next, another breakdown argues Rubio's connecting Cuba's influence machine to the mainstreaming of Marxist policies. Rubio putting out the report that ties the launch of Obama, the mainstreaming of Marxist politics, to that propagated by the Cuban regime, highlighting how he was recruited by the founders of domestic terror group Weather Underground, which aimed to overthrow the U.S. government. So Obama is explicitly named in the Rubio report. So if Cuba's reach really extended into activist pipelines here at home, the next piece shows why people are watching protest networks closely. It spotlights a rapid response plan aimed at military sites, ICE offices, and federal buildings if Washington moves on Cuba. Cuba sleeper agents, poised to wage war in California, put U.S. on high alert as map of their top targets emerges. The plan outlines coordinated nationwide actions within 24 hours if there is an imminent threat or U.S. military move against Cuba. The National Network on Cuba, which created the Rapid Response Plan, brings together over 50 groups, including Democrat Socialists of America, Communist Party USA, and Code Pink. Organizers will focus on military bases, recruitment offices, federal buildings, ICE facilities, and even sports arenas during big events, according to the documents. And this is what the New York Post is putting out. So that cranks up the threat all the way. Up next, Fact Check pushes back hard, saying the document is public protest. Grok says the NNOC, the National Rapid Response Plan, is public activist coordination for protests within 24 hours of U.S. military move on Cuba. We know what that's code for. It's all peaceful, mostly peaceful protests, right? It's always mostly peaceful until they start firebombing buildings. So the examples given for locations: Portland, Orlando, Boston. In California, that would mean spots with those facilities: San Diego Naval Base, Los Angeles, San Diego ICE offices, and federal buildings. It's protest planning, that's what Grok says. But Grok doesn't have the full context, apparently. Next, we go from protest claims to real economic pain as Spanish hotel chains start pulling out after Trump's new sanctions. 3 Spanish hotel chains announced they will be ceasing operations in Cuba after Trump's sanctioning Cuba's tourism ministry. So the hotel exits showed that sanctions are hitting where it hurts. And then Bannon warns Rubio and the foreign policy crowd are teeing up an information campaign for something much bigger.
Imperial state, in the way that the corporations want the military and the deep state to be the cop everywhere. Even Rubio had to say it. One of the biggest neocons out there had to say it. You know, distracted him for a second for the invasion of Cuba, because now you see they're teeing up Cuba. Cuba's the font of communism, and Cuba's the font of all this and that. This is how they prep the information war battlefield. We could be everywhere. In fact, we are everywhere. I think we're in 127 countries. You can be spread all over hell's half acre with what are security concerns. You got to prioritize. This is how you stop yourself from having a $2 trillion defense budget paid for by the American taxpayers and not any of these deadbeats around the world, including the biggest deadbeats, which are the Gulf Emirates right now. They're total free riding on the United States of America and the kids of the United States of America. How many...
So Bannon says this is how the intervention argument gets sold. Meanwhile, next, the unrest on the ground in Cuba. Reports of protesters shouting for freedom and tearing at regime propaganda. that is a massive protest in San Diego de la Vegas. Protesters attempted to tear down regime propaganda posters while shouting freedom and down with the Castros. It's also reported that the people gathered around. So after the street scenes, the next clip asks who actually runs Havana. A dissident voice says Washington wasn't dealing with a figurehead at all with Raul Castro's family, Powder Center. Brussels signaled Cuba's president denied any knowledge of U.S. talks, but the bigger question remains, who was Washington actually negotiating with?
The United States announced that they had a dialogue underway with the Cuban government, and the head of the Cuban government, nominally, his name is Miguel Díaz-Canel, and he was saying that he didn't know anything about a dialogue. So the assumption was he was either lying or there was something else going on. And what we see is that the person the U.S. government was talking to was Raul Castro's grandson, Raulito. And Miguel either was lying or just didn't know because he's not that important. And a few weeks later, he came out in a national address to say, yes, in fact, the United States was in dialogue with Cuba, but in the room sitting there in a very prominent location was Raulito Castro. So we see who the person is behind the throne.
So the interview points to the regime. Behind the regime, next, the predictable far-left response to Communist Party USA says Rubio's report is bogus, claims MAGA is using Cuba as an excuse to crush the left. Communist Party USA on X. Why are more and more young people in the U.S. looking left for answers? A new report from the U.S. State Department blames an old scapegoat, foreign communist subversion. They write, this time around, the Cuban government stands accused of masterminding the entire anti-war, anti-racist, anti-capitalist left in the U.S. They say the allegations are ridiculous, but the goal is no joke, military action against Cuba and violent suppression of the left and people's movements here at home. And that's, I mean, look, I believe that to be true. I believe that what we are seeing is the groundwork being laid for the invasion of Cuba, like it or not. But we definitely do need to crush the radical left here in the United States. Join us Friday for discussion. Communist Party USA on YouTube. So the communists are calling it propaganda, which tells you Rubio hit a nerve next. Havana's own foreign minister lashes out, accusing the U.S. of collective punishment and denying Cuba any threat at all. He says every act of aggression by the U.S. government, such as the measures announced on July 23rd by the Secretary of State, demonstrates that the goal is to impose collective punishment on the entire Cuban people, despite the fact the U.S. government continues to deny. Well, it's not about punishing the Cuban people. They're crying victim, but the final move is action, as Washington drops fresh sanctions on Cuban entities and officials over security threats, sanctions evasion, and forced labor. U.S. imposing fresh sanctions on Cuba, this is just happened today, over security threats. Washington targets 11 entities and individuals, with Rubio accusing the Havana regime of sanctions, evasion, and exploiting overseas medical workers. So, quote, over the past century, programs like the Brigade have helped Cuba infiltrate, and that line is the blade, because Marco Rubio names the regime, names the method, and then drive it straight through Barack Obama's sanitized origin story by tying Havana's subversion to the radicals who launched him in 1995, which means this was never harmless nostalgia about old revolutionaries. It was a communist conveyor belt into elite academia, NGOs, and the Democrat machine. So Marco Rubio needs to keep naming Barack Obama, Bill Ayers, Bernardine Dorn. No more fog, no more cute nostalgia about communist chick, while Havana rigs infiltration, forced labor cash, border pressure, and intel games 90 miles off of Florida. Trump said Cuba is next. And I want you to hear that as strength, not drift. We watched fake tough guys appease this regime for years, and all they bought was more misery for Cubans and more cover for American radicals who treated Havana like a moral mascot. So drop your take below on how hard Trump should press. And send this to one person still repeating Mark Polkin's nothing bad happened nonsense. And keep your eyes on every Democrat who scrambles to defend this dictatorship when the screws tighten. You see, Trump's Cuba is next warning is exactly why our Inside channel matters tonight. So text White House to 844-840-4963. Next News Network is credentialed inside the White House, and our nightly reports pulled straight from the building hit your phone ahead of the crowd, past YouTube's suppression games, and right where the gatekeepers can't touch them. Wow, that report went a lot longer than I expected. But it was well-deserved. Very important information for you guys, so I hope you're able to absorb it all. It will be dropping as an individual segment on the channel and on X as well. So make sure you check it on both platforms as well as on Trump Daily Post. Okay. Now we're going to move into our final story of the evening. Jake Tapper finally admitting that illegals vote. What does this mean? We're going to get into the answer to that question in this next segment. Thank you for watching us tonight. We are live right now. I see your comments. Good show. Thank you, Kryn, Lynn, Pothead Kenny, Walt, Patricia. See you guys. It's great to have you here. Okay. Okay, we're waiting for the system to activate. Give us one moment. We'll get this thing rolling for you. I don't think there's very many people who are tracking Cuba like we are. I've been watching this for months and months and months, ever since President Trump started talking about it. And we're going to continue to track it. Because it does, I mean, he keeps saying Cuba's next. And I believe President Trump when he says it. And then when he tells the press to say, oh, pretend I didn't say that, it's because, I mean, he's obviously telegraphing the United States' next moves. We saw what happened in Venezuela. They were the first domino to fall. They're waiting to finish the game in Iran, and they need to move quicker, personally. And as soon as that is wrapped up, they are going to go and take out Cuba. It's just a matter of time. Okay, so we're going to go into this next topic. And give me 1 second here, and we'll get that going for you. Okay. You're not supposed to vote. You're not supposed to be here. So why do you vote? That's what Jake Tapper just said out loud on CNN. So sit with that for a moment. See, the machine cracked so hard, even Tapper blurted the question Democrats spent years smothering. And wait until you see the Minnesota fraud photo tying this racket straight to Ilhan Omar and Tim Walz. We're talking about $998 per day, jail time, and deportation. That DHS warning means the Trump administration finally put teeth behind the law. And take a look at the contrast with what Barack Obama said on live television, telling undocumented people that they can't stop you from voting. And then watch Caroline Leavitt torch the benefit scam right to a reporter's face. You and I paid for this racket, while Democrats like Ilhan Omar, Tim Walz, and Zoran Mandami wrapped it in fake morality. This is not paperwork. This is sovereignty, elections, and who this country actually belongs to. You see, Jake Tapper finally asked a question that millions of Americans asked years ago. And it got me thinking about another thing modern life quietly steals. I'm talking about recovery. MedBed hack, it starts right there. And think about the last time you felt genuinely recovered. Jonathan Otto and Red Life built this around a cellular energy focus because mitochondria lose their right frequencies of light and the right they need the right frequencies of light and the right electromagnetic environment. That means less energy production, slower recovery, slower repair. Now, MedBed hack combines red light therapy and PEMF. They're two clinically studied wellness technologies using specific wavelengths to boost cellular energy production and support natural repair processes. Gentle electromagnetic pulses help circulation, recovery, and function. I use it daily. I have a red light. I have a PEMF mat. It is part of my biohack routine. Now with them, you get 10 clinically studied wavelengths. That's what I'm using. Advanced dual chip technology, up to twice the power. It's only 30 minutes a day, right from home. So hit medbedhack.com. It's linked below. Code NNN30 for 30% off bundles, NNN25 for 25% off individual devices. Americans need strength for this fight. Now, Abdul Dahir Ibrahim, he had a removal order since 2004, and he still posed with Ilhan Omar and Tim Walz for photos. See, that's the part they never want us to stare at for too long. It's not random chaos. It's protected chaos. Now hold that thought, because the tweets and video lay out the whole conveyor belt in public. Brian, mute yourself. Thank you. Let's go into it. Jake Tapper drops a reality check right here on CNN of all places.
You're in the country illegally, and you get a letter saying that you can vote, and you know you're not supposed to, not only you're not supposed to vote, you're not supposed to be there. Why do you vote? Like, how do you get registered for a party? Well, some of them I mean, but I just wonder, that's some stupid business. Anyway.
Yeah. Jake Tapper just sneaking it in. Saying the quiet part out loud on CNN. If you're here illegally, why are you voting? Next, we go back to Barack Obama on camera telling dreamers and undocumented people they can't be stopped from voting. Barack Obama instructed illegal immigrants to go vote in U.S. elections on live television.
If you want to vote and you show up at your polling place, they can't stop you from voting. They can't stop you from voting. If people want to know how to vote, then you can go to iwillvote.com. The fact of the matter is that we give our power away all the time. You know, we tell ourselves, oh, it's hard, it's not going to matter, it's not going to count. And the powers that be, they're counting on us giving our power away.
Many of the millennials, dreamers, undocumented citizens, and I call them citizens because they contribute to this country, are fearful of voting. So if I vote, will immigration know where I live? Will they come for my family and deport us?
Not true.
Okay.
And the reason is, first of all, when you vote, you are a citizen yourself, and there is not a situation where the voting rolls somehow are transferred over and people start investigating, etc. The sanctity of the vote is strictly confidential in terms of who you voted for. If you have a family member who maybe is undocumented, then you have an even greater reason to vote.
This has been a...
You have an even greater reason to vote. So when Democrats claim this was never encouraged, Obama's own words tell a very different story. Now watch Caroline Leavitt torch the Biden team scheme to hand illegal aliens taxpayer-funded Medicaid benefits.
To undocumented immigrants, even though it's against the law for them to get these benefits. I know there's some debate about law-free presence.
Do you think that illegal aliens should receive Medicaid benefits? Medicaid benefits that go to the most vulnerable people
I didn't ask about benefits, and that's a debate.
Medicaid benefits that were designed to help low-income families and Americans in our country.
But they can't receive them.
But what the Biden administration did, Gabe, is they allowed tens of millions of illegal aliens from all over the world
Parole and temporary
to come
protected
into our
status.
country, yes, and they paroled them into the system. And you cover immigration, and you know well, it was a complete abuse of our immigration
But my
system.
question
and they
isn't-
slapped a Band-Aid on these illegals. They called it temporary protective status, and then they allowed those illegals from all over the world to get free benefits. And you know who would like free benefits?
I understand that point,
Hardworking
Caroline.
Americans who work their butts off every day, who are living paycheck to paycheck because of the Biden-induced inflation crisis. And there were higher wait times at hospitals under the Biden administration. We saw these illegals committing crimes all over our country, and they're getting things for free. That is fundamentally unfair, and this administration
But
is not
for
going
the
to
ER.
So Leavitt lays out the cost of American families when illegals get freebies meant for citizens. Next, to see what happens on the ground when ICE arrests a criminal alien and the left-wing activist tries to interfere anyway. This brainwashed idiot gets right in the ICE agent's face, all because Democrats propagandize him that he's some kind of hero protecting his neighbor. It is absolute clown world right now.
What happened?
She's under arrest.
For what?
She's a criminal alien.
For what?
She has a warrant, and she's been convicted of crime.
For what? What crime? What crime? What crime? What crime?
She's been convicted of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. She's not allowed to be here, and she's been deported previously. She doesn't have no documents.
No, she hasn't. Yeah. Aggravated assault? No, this is not correct.
I have her whole rap sheet. I've been following her forever. Go.
Forever? No, this is, you lying. Come on. This is not true.
Would you like me to post a rap sheet on your phone? I'll post a rap sheet for you.
Come on, let me see. No, let me see the evidence. No, let me see the evidence.
If you don't
let me
back
see the evidence. Let me see the evidence. Let me see the evidence.
Back up. Back up.
Let me see the evidence.
I said back.
Let me see.
I said back. I said
bro,
back. I said
why
back.
you hit me, bro?
I said back.
Why'd you hit me?
Bye-bye. So the confrontation says that all Democrats turned basic enforcement into a street-level circus. Now to Minnesota, where a convicted fraudster and illegal alien is photographed cozying up with Ilhan Omar and Tim Walz.
All right, this news just breaking moments ago. Fox News has obtained photos of one of the Somali illegal immigrants wrapped up in the Minnesota fraud scandal, posing with several high-profile Minnesota Democrats, including Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and Governor Tim Walz. The man pictured is Abdul Dahir Ibrahim. He entered the country in 2000 and has had an order for removal since 2004. He also has a prior conviction in Canada for asylum and welfare fraud. ICE tells Fox News Ibrahim was granted temporary protected status for 10 years, but should have never been eligible. We are going to have more on this in our next hour.
So the Minnesota photos raise the question every voter should be asking: who exactly has this machine been protecting? Next, USCIS sends the opposite message with a recruitment push to crack down on immigration fraud. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services has declared war on immigration fraud. Protect the homeland, defend America. So they're ready to fight the fraud instead of feeding it, and DHS takes a step further in the next clip with a blunt warning to illegal aliens: leave now or face fines, jail, and deportation. They just posted this. Our message to illegal aliens is clear: leave now. If you don't, you'll face the consequences, including fines, arrest, and deportation. A warning to self-deport. Our message is clear: fines and penalties. You'll face $998 a day if you receive the final order of removal and stayed. Imprisonment if you fail to self-deport. You may be subject to jail time under U.S. Code Title 8, Section 1325. Deportation. You will be removed from our nation and never allowed to return. Leave today and use the app. And that's the kind of language Americans have been waiting to hear from Washington. Next, Senator Eric Schmidt explains how Democrats abused temporary protected status until temporary became permanent.
TPS was created for emergencies. Democrats turned it into a one-way racket towards permanent mass migration. Here's how the racket works. An emergency creates temporary status. Then the emergency passes, but the status stays. The deadline arrives, but Washington extends it. The voters demand enforcement, but Democrats refuse. Every click moves towards permanence. None moves back towards the law. That is the TPS racket.
The TPS racket that is now being unraveled. So he maps out the scam. Now comes a real-world example: ICE arresting a Southwest flight attendant who DHS says overstayed his visa while activists rushed to defend him. Bill Malusian reports DHS confirms that ICE has arrested a Southwest Airlines flight attendant while at work on July 14th. Lorenzo Thompson, a Jamaican illegal who came to the U.S. on a visa in 2021, set to expire 6 months later, when he illegally overstayed and failed to depart. DHS says he'll remain in custody pending immigration proceedings. In a statement, Thompson's Dallas-based union acknowledged his arrest and said they've been in communication with his family and legal counsel. The Labor Council for Latin American Advancement is decrying his arrest, claiming he has no criminal record, a valid work visa, and was following every legal step towards citizenship. Sure. That's why you don't overstay your visa, dude. The rest shows the playbook. And shifting gears now, Congressman Brandon Gill argues the West keeps paying a price when leaders refuse to speak honestly about Islamic immigration. He says we have to be truthful about Islamic immigration because Muslims will take over the West and America.
If you point out what's happening here, if you're truthful about what mass Islamic immigration has done to Great Britain, you're an Islamophobe, you're a racist, you're uncouth or unfit for dignified civilized society, when the impact of that type of suppression of speech means that working class people have been brutally raped and tortured. And that's something that we deal with in the United States on a smaller level, but something we deal with now. If you speak out against mass Islamic immigration, you are denigrated and labeled a racist. And we have to be able to be truthful about these issues and straightforward that whenever you bring in large numbers of people from cultures that hold values that are entirely incompatible with our own, in this case, the belief that Muslims have more dignity and are superior to non-Muslims, that child marriages are okay, that Muslims can essentially subjugate other people, including young children, sexually. If you speak out against that, you're Islamophobic. We have got to get over that because you can see what the price is, and those working class girls are the ones who paid the price here.
There were a few claims made in this video.
So, Gill says the political class shuts down debate by slapping critics with labels. We see it all the time. Next, we move to New York, where Zohran Mamdani invokes Islam and the story of Muhammad to frame his own message on immigration from a New York podium. Dr. Malouf says Zohran Mamdani says America should look into Islam and follow the example of Prophet Muhammad on immigration. Fun fact, he writes, after conquering Mecca, Muhammad deported all the Christians and Jews and banned them from entering the city ever again. To this day, non-Muslims are not allowed to enter Mecca because they are considered dirty and impure. He asks the question, does Mamdani want to turn New York into an all-Islamic state like his prophet did to Mecca?
Think of the freedom from suffering that Buddhism teaches us is only possible if we remove the three poisons of desire, hatred, and ignorance from our daily lives. We need not accept suffering as unchangeable. We need not treat hatred as the natural state. We have the power to set ourselves free. And I consider my own faith, Islam, a religion built upon a narrative of migration. The story of the Hijrah reminds us that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a stranger too, who fled Mecca and was welcomed in Medina. Surah An-Nahl 1642 tells us, as for those who immigrated in the cause of Allah after being persecuted, we will surely bless them with a good home in this world. Or as the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Islam began as something strange and will go back to being strange. So glad tidings to the strangers. If faith...
And they clap like seals. But leave now, quote, leave now or face the consequences, sits next to Jake Tapper's illegal voting question for a reason. Donald Trump is smashing the fraud pipeline while Barack Obama, Ilhan Omar, Tim Walz, and the Democrat machine spent years feeding it with loopholes, benefits, status, games, and propaganda. And now every name attached to that racket is getting dragged into daylight where they can't hide behind the word compassion anymore. Ilhan Omar, Tim Walz, and Zohran Mamdani need to answer for this machine right now. Put their names in the comments and share this with a person who still swears the border disaster was just bureaucratic sloppiness, and make them watch the receipts. Jake Tapper asking why illegals vote. DHS warning illegals to leave now. Eric Schmick busting the TPS racket. And that photo of Abdul Dahar Ibrahim grinning beside top Minnesota Democrats after sitting under a removal order for 2 decades. See, that's not a glitch. That's a cartel. They imported dependency, subsidized lawbreaking, and screamed racism at every American who caught on. Well, patriots caught on anyway. And now the Trump administration is hitting back with fines, arrests, fraud crackdowns, and actual enforcement. So keep the pressure on. No amnesty spin, no voter integrity retreat, no protection for the people who built this scam. Tapper's on-air crack and that Omar Walls photo are exactly the kind of receipts that YouTube loves to bury, so text the words White House to 844-840-4963. We are credentialed inside the White House, and our nightly reports from inside the building hit your phone ahead of the algorithm, ahead of the crowd, and right where the gatekeepers can't choke them off. So that is a wrap for the broadcast tonight. I want to thank you guys for joining us yet again on this Thursday. We're getting close to the end of the week, and we'll see you tomorrow. I'm sure they'll have a lot more news for us to track as we continue to bring you the latest on all the happenings in Washington, D.C. and around the nation and around the world. But we can't do this without you guys. You guys are the heart and soul of this channel. Brian, myself, our team, we work tirelessly to curate the news, bring you the stories, break the narratives, but it's really you guys that keep showing up that make the difference. When you hit share, when you send a text message to your friend, dude, you got to see what Gary just said, what he just covered, what he just broke, all these things, that's what helps us grow. We're under tremendous suppression right now. YouTube is up to their old tricks. Nothing new for us. We've always dodged and weaved, but they've really put us into a position where it's almost impossible to continue. And that breaks my heart, personally. But you can help us continue. With your continued support, your continued shares, your continued comments, your thumbs up, your likes, your reshares, all the things that need to be done to break through the algorithmic suppression. We depend on you guys. And we thank you. Good night, and God bless.